was the smallest tech up to the most advanced stuff using AI systems with drones, green on brown, green on green, spot spraying. Amazing stuff from a technological development, and indeed you're thinking, look, that's not for me right now, and maybe in 5 years it's still not for me, but like beyond that, maybe that stuff will start to come true. I mean, some of the figures they were saying there were, herbicide reductions of up to 70% because you're spot spraying rather than blanket spraying. That's a win-win for all the boxes that have to be ticked.
Farmers had plenty of time to attend events over the past few weeks, and it was great to see such strong turnout at all the events. It's always a great pleasure to catch up with farmers and colleagues from across the country at these events. No matter what event you go to, there's always something new to learn, not just from the stands and demonstrations, but also from the conversations on the day. You're very welcome to the latest episode of the Tillage Edge with me, Michael Hennessy. If you enjoyed the podcast, we'd really appreciate it if you could listen, follow and leave a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. It was great to see so many people attending the Teagasc Crops and Technology Open Day in Carlow last week. While at the event, I caught up with many of the presenters and researchers to hear the key messages from their stands. On this episode, you'll hear from Ewen Mullins about the event in general, Veronica Nyhan on soils, and Jack Jameson on selecting wheat varieties. First up, I spoke with Dr. Ewen Mullins, Head of Crops Research at Oak Park and the main event organiser, and I first asked Ewen for a sense of the feedback from attendees on the day.
First of all, it was a fantastic day, you're right, and huge credit goes to the team here at Oak Park and in the other research centres who put on a fantastic display. It was a partnership event with the Journal, and I think the overwhelming responses we got from people were extremely positive. When it came to individuals' stands or research areas or even cropping systems, the plant protein was a huge attraction. Why? Probably because there was tactile demonstrations. People could feel products, they could taste products, sense, smell them, the whole lot, and then the more practical stuff as well. Out at the wheat stand, the simple things about fungicide usage, the management of diseases, issues with yellow rust. I think it's just the opportunity to engage and talk with the researchers, with advisory staff, is a lovely mix, and it leads to that really good engagement, and that was what we got back from everybody all the way around.
A couple of people said to me that they were particularly impressed with the soil pit and all of the information that was in that.
Yeah, so like something as simple as just digging a trench in the ground was a huge attraction, and then previously we were thinking dig a trench, people can walk past and understand what's happening. But actually, then we thought, why don't we just have people walking into the trench? Because then it's a much better experience for them. And that worked extremely well. And a real credit to the staff that were out there all day. And when you make stuff so simple to demonstrate and easier for people to understand, you get that great engagement. And we saw that across all the other areas, like the BYDV, the grass weeds, the rye, the oats, the barley, everywhere. And I suppose from my perspective, we've so many early career researchers and students here, and they're just enthused by the interaction and the engagement with people.
And then from the simple hole in the ground, if you like, and poking around in that too, we're looking out here on some of the most complicated machines we've seen here. We had the electrocution machine, let's call it that, or the chair of death maybe, out here being demonstrated today in the potato crop.
A huge attraction, and rightly so, because it's so novel. Even the concept of it, electrocuting the plant, who would have thought? And yet we've seen within an hour the crop is struggling, and we had plots here and tram lines from last week that were done, and obviously they're looking extremely well, and that the crop is near destroyed and ready to move on to the next stage. I mean, when you have a machine like that, it obviously attracts a huge interest by everybody, not just necessarily potato growers, because these sorts of machines maybe have other applications, possibly with cover cropping destruction and other things. Sure, there's logistics and there's a huge expense, but on saying that, the idea of this event is to show things coming down the line, and what can we do to promote alternatives. This one, obviously, the benefit of it is that you don't need any herbicide to burn off a potato crop. And that's a real plus, because that Europe is heading that way. You know, they're pulling back on chemistries. That's a huge problem in certain aspects of control. But this was a really positive thing here today.
I think, as far as I could see, it was probably the majority of the potato industry was here to see it, I think, on the day. Similarly, I suppose, with a comment that was made by a farmer that, look, 10 years ago they were looking at some of the tech that was going around here and kind of saying, I might never use that, but 10 years later they are. Yeah. Similarly, with all the sprayers that were going around here, there was a lot of tech on display.
There was. I mean, and I suppose what's most encouraging for people is that it was the smallest tech up to the most advanced stuff, using AI systems with drones, green on brown, green on green, spot spraying. Amazing stuff from a technological development. And indeed you're thinking, look, that's not for me right now, and maybe in 5 years it's still not for me, but like beyond that, maybe that stuff will start to come true. I mean, some of the figures they were saying there were, you know, herbicide reductions of up to 70% because you're spot spraying rather than blanket spraying. You know, that's a win-win for all the boxes that have to be ticked. So with any technological development, it doesn't matter what it is in life, the initial prototypes and developments are always more expensive. But, you know, when they get traction and when they can be demonstrated to work, that's when the interest increases and hopefully they become more cost effective.
And I suppose at the last one we had a number of ministers here turned up, all the senior ministers, and they were launching a number of various different things around the site today.
Yeah, so we had Minister Healy-Rae, we had Minister Hayden as well, launch of AgNav, the tillage application, which was actually really encouraging to see the interest in that, because we know the tillage sector has a low carbon footprint. This puts some objective data on it, it demonstrates it, so it's great to see farmers engaging with that and wanting to know more about their own systems. We hope that expands further. Obviously, what really matters is if there is payment to farmers for that low carbon footprint, and that's something that we really need to see in time. In terms of forestry, health and safety, we had launches there in various different things. So look, a huge crowd today, far exceeded our expectations. The feedback from people has been really positive. Great effort by all staff and students, and a day to remember.
Ewen, fantastic job yet again. Of credit to you and your staff. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Michael.
One of the highlights on the day was a large soil pit installed as part of the research display, which drew a lot of attention. I stopped by to chat with Veronica Nyhan, a soils and plant nutritional specialist at Teagasc, to get a guided tour of what was on show. I began by asking Veronica to describe the soil pit and what it revealed.
So we're here in Malone's field, which is a research field in Oak Park, where we have done continuous cropping. We don't use it a lot in nutrition trials, so we don't tend to add organic manures to this field because we want a baseline fertility that's consistent. So what we did was we dug this trench transecting a tram line on close to the headland, because we wanted to show how a lack of organic manure can cause structural damage, especially in tillage systems, plough-based tillage systems, and we've succeeded in that because we've got very clear features here of compaction, including a platy structure high up in the soil profile. What
does the platy structure look like? Describe that to me.
Okay, so when we talk about PEDs, we talk about how soils naturally come together in clumps. And what we want, and a good feature to have in your soil profile, particularly high up, is very rounded, small PEDs. So like small clumps of soil, like you're talking centimetre or so in diameter. A platy structure literally looks like a slab, or it's like we have some of them here that look nearly like patio slabs.
Running horizontally across the line.
Very flat, like a plate.
Okay.
And the problem with them is they're a real indication of compaction, and water just will not penetrate them. It kind of flows off the top of them and tries to find vertical cracks between them.
And would the same be true then for roots coming down through that as well?
Yeah, like all roots will struggle to get through compaction, but we're seeing this actually particularly over on the turning headland on the far side of the pit. We're seeing it really up on the very top soil. So like it's just very difficult for roots to penetrate. They will try, but it's very hard for them to alleviate it.
A lot of talk about cover crops, of which I'm seeing some nice ones in front of me: the phacelias, vetches, buckwheat, tillage radishes. A lot of talk about some of those crops being able to be pan busters. Is there any much truth in that?
No, they don't bust the pan, but what they do is create small fresh fractures, which can help for air to get down, and we see weathering activity amplifying the effect. But really what we're talking about here today is these cover crops are going in to trap nutrients, but when they are broken down and incorporated repeatedly year on year, they're creating an organic mass or material that will feed a small soil biology and create a soil food web in the soil, and that biology will cause building from micro to meso to macrofauna to move through the soil layers, mixing the organic material, and that will help alleviate the compaction over time.
Okay, so the key message here really is add organic manures in whatever form.
Absolutely.
Organic matter really, I suppose, in whatever form, whether it's chopped straw or farmyard manure or cover crops beaten into it or whatever happens to be. Get that into soil, and that's going to be helpful for soil long term.
Yeah, like really the solution, and we're like a big part of our message here is soil health and soil resilience. Right now, because this has a plough pan, really all the activity is in the top 20 centimetres. So the crop is struggling because it has no access to a reserve of water below 20 centimetres, and when it dries out, it only has 20 centimetres of drying area. When you have soil organic matter, you're also building water holding capacity, you're building soil biology, wherever it comes from. We've just used the cover crops here because, a lot of people struggle to get access to good quality organic manures.
So if I'm thinking like a lot of tillage farmers, well, hopefully maybe not that many, but certainly some tillage farmers out there who are thinking, I have a big tractor and I have a big subsoiler. Can I just go in there and just bust up that pan and that'll be me grand and I can just continue on as normal?
Okay, so like the one we're looking at here, the Luvisol that we're looking at here has a pan, but its subsoil is actually a heavy clay. So really it would be very difficult to, the whole point of subsoiling is to have a layer of compaction, but you need to have kind of free draining underneath it. So you're going to run a machine through to crack the pan, but the water won't build up underneath. We don't have that here. It's literally kind of almost compacted all the way down. So a subsoiler here wouldn't be very effective. The reality is also because it's clay, it's already dried so much it's starting to crack. You have to get it very dry down deep into the profile. And if you're in a weather condition where you're getting a heavy clay that dry, it's probably cracking itself naturally.
Which probably screams to me the value of digging out a pit to see what you have down there in the first place.
Absolutely. Look, if you're ever considering subsoiling, the first thing you have to do is identify the pan and the depth of it and the consistency of it. So you're going to have to dig multiple pits across the area where you think the compaction is, because otherwise you're guessing, and you can do an enormous amount of harm if you incorrectly subsoil.
Of which you're probably going to do no harm at all at any stage if you just add organic manures of some one or another.
No, and you're going to get so much more benefits because it's not just about structure, it's about biology, it's about carbon sequestration, it's about, water holding capacity, nutrient holding capacity. Like organic manure improves soil physics, chemistry and biology.
Nothing but positive then really.
Absolutely,
Brilliant. That's a great demonstration, Veronica. I think you got a lot of people through today and a huge amount of questions.
Yeah, great. And we'd lovely bumblebees and loads of biodiversity above ground as well. So it was a fantastic day.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
A number of farmers mentioned the soil pit to me on the day, so well done to Veronica and her team for putting that together. Next up, I caught up with Jack Jameson, a researcher in Teagasc, who's leading a trial on the potential of different wheat varieties which may be used in the Irish environment. I asked Jack to explain what the project was trying to achieve.
We're predominantly looking at can we control septoria using varietal resistance, or are there any novel sources of varietal resistance that might, I suppose, give us some more resilience in trying to develop our septoria control programs.
Add more diversity to our existing varieties that we have there, because we're always a bit close at the moment. Although I see, looking across this trial, there's tall varieties, small varieties. We also have varieties here with low nitrogen, high nitrogen scenarios. What's the interaction there?
Yeah, so look, we've 0% nitrogen, we've a 30, a 70 and a 120% of optimum nitrogen. And all we're trying to do there is seeing are there differences in disease levels at the different nitrogen level, different nitrogen rates, and really is there any difference in terms of how, I suppose, the varietal resistance is performing at the different nitrogen rates? So is there any interaction there?
Okay, so is there anything, is this the first year of the trial, or is there anything jumping out at you in terms of the varieties that you have in here?
No, so this isn't the first year of the trial, so this is actually a very large project. So in terms of an Irish context, UCD would have ran year 1 of the trial last year in Lyons Farm, but equally I suppose last year and indeed this year, this trial is being replicated in, I suppose, Italy, France, Spain and Denmark. So look, there's a range of information being collected on each of the varieties. In the field here we have 20 varieties. Some of those varieties will be common across all the different sites across Europe. So we're looking at the agronomic traits, we're looking at quality traits. So we've both, I suppose, conventional wheat and durum wheat. And of course we're looking at, I suppose, disease resistance. And I suppose the overall objective of the project from our perspective is to see, I suppose, if you think about genetic resistance, the breeders aren't going to breed specifically for the Irish market because I suppose relative to other markets we're about 60,000 hectares, which would be quite small on a European scale. So we're seeing, like, can we, I suppose, identify any material or varieties from this trial, because it's a genetically diverse panel of varieties that might be of interest or of use in an Irish context. And if we can signpost that, or I suppose give grower or breeders a bit of feedback, could they, I suppose, in time look at some crosses off that material for maybe the recommended list trial or something. So this is more of a long-term burner, but the hope would be that maybe in time it might help some more robust genetic resistance susceptoria come true for us.
Which I suppose is going to be a good thing, because we do have, we don't have to go back too far, where all of the varieties had a cougar gene in them that broke down, so it basically wiped out the development of wheat for a number of years. So if you had more diversity in the entire seed bank coming to Ireland in terms of varieties, it has to be only a good thing.
Yeah, like the diversity is key, because I think it gives us more resilience and flexibility, but probably from a timing perspective when we're trying to get work done in the field around spraying, if we've strong genetic resistance, it probably gives us that couple of days if we have it. But equally from, I suppose, a fungicide resistance development perspective, if we've strong genetic resistance, it's probably easing some of the pressure on the fungicides as well. So I think in the long term, the more diversity and resistance we have, the better, because the less likely will be overcome quickly, you know. We
talked to Stephen Kildea a little bit about yellow rust, and as he was saying, most of the varieties that are coming through all seem to have a bit of susceptibility to yellow rust. Have you seen anything, or have you spotted anything different in this in terms of yellow rust, again with the diversity in mind? Yeah, look, the diversity here is obviously, that was the whole aim of the trial, so there was quite large differences. Some varieties quite early in the season were showing quite a lot of yellow rust, so and we had from UCD, the guys there, they had given us an inkling of some of the varieties that were going to be quite weak, and that came straight through. Some varieties had it quite progressed up through the crop early in the season, and we had to try and get on top of that early, which we did a fairly okay job doing. But I think with yellow rust, with that developing, I suppose we'd have to be really mindful how we develop our programs next year, you know. And when's the project finishing, and when would anybody expect anything coming out? You say it's a long-term bet, but when's the project finishing? So the project, I think, is finishing early to mid next year, but like, I suppose the samples off this field here that we're standing in, Michael, they'll be analysed over the winter in Spain and in France. So we'll be hopeful that in the next year we'll have some really interesting results coming out of it. Brilliant. Listen, best of luck with the project. Thanks very much, Jack. Thanks, Michael. So that's it for today's episode, and a big thank you to Ewen, Veronica and Jack for joining me on the podcast. I'll have more updates from the Oak Park Open Day in next week's episode. So if you enjoyed the podcast, then please recommend it to a friend or colleague, and don't forget to rate, review and follow on Apple or Spotify so you never miss an episode. I'm Michael Hennessy. Thanks for listening.